I'm Julian, 32 years old, and tonight, my own brother spat a mouthful of goose liver pate onto my chest in front of 200 of the wealthiest people in New York City. Before I tell you how you ended up owning the company I was trying to impress, go ahead and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. It happened in slow motion.
But to understand why I let it get this far, why I let them treat me like a doormat for 30 years, you have to understand the double life I'd been leading. Rewind for weeks. I was standing in the kitchen of Eclipse. If you live in New York, you know the name. No signage, no phone number, just a black door in Tribeca and a 6-month waiting list. The critics called the head chef the alchemist, because nobody knew his real name. They only knew the food. That was me. I was the alchemist. In my kitchen, I was a god. I had 40 staff members who moved when I nodded. The kitchen was a symphony of controlled chaos. The hiss of searing scallops, the rhythmic chopping of knives, the call and response of "Oui, chef." I was plating the signature dish, a velouté of wild mushrooms with black truffle oil. It had to be perfect. The balance of earthiness and cream needed to be exact. I used a pair of tweezers to place a single microgreen on top. It was art. It was power. My sous chef, Marco, walked up to me. He was a big guy, loyal to a fault. He was the face the public saw because I refused to do press. "Chef," Marco said quietly, "Table 4 is asking for you again. It's the senator. Tell him the alchemist is busy creating." I said, not looking up. "Send them the complimentary dessert." I loved the anonymity. It was my shield. In here, I wasn't Julian the failure. I wasn't the disappointment of the family. I was a master. My salary from the restaurant group I secretly owned was easily 7 figures, dwarfing anything my brother made. I had a lawyer managing my assets, a diverse portfolio, and I was looking into buying a penthouse uptown. But outside these walls, I was nobody. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen lit up. Caleb. I sighed, stripping off my latex gloves. The transition was always jarring. 1 minute I was commanding a kitchen, the next I was bracing myself for abuse. "Hello, Caleb," I answered. "Julian." His voice was loud, likely on speakerphone in his car. I could hear the engine of his Ferrari revving. He loved that car more than he loved people. "Where are you? Mom said you weren't at the apartment." I lived in a modest apartment in Queens to keep up appearances. "I'm working, Caleb. What do you need?" "Working?" he scoffed. "You mean flipping burgers or whatever it is you do? Listen, I need you. I'm hosting the biggest gala of the year next month. It's for my new development project. I need staff. You want me to cater it?" I asked, a flicker of hope rising. Maybe he wanted to hire me. Maybe he respected my skills. "Cater it? God, no." Caleb laughed, a cruel, barking sound. "I hired Eclipse for the catering. Top tier. I need you to work the floor. We're short on grunts to bus tables and wash dishes. Mom and Dad said you could use the extra cash since you're always broke." I closed my eyes. Eclipse. He hired my company, and he wanted me to wash dishes at my own event. "Caleb, I don't think." "Don't start with me, Julian." He cut me off. "This is big. I have investors coming from Dubai. I have Elena's reputation on the line. She's bringing all her critic friends. If this goes well, the family finally gets the payout we deserve. Don't be selfish. Mom is already crying thinking you won't help." Emotional blackmail. It was their specialty. "Fine," I said, my voice flat. "I'll be there." "Good. And Julian, try to look presentable. Don't embarrass me." He hung up. I stood there in the middle of my stainless steel empire, holding a phone that felt like a lead weight. Marco looked at me, concern in his eyes. He knew the situation. He knew my family was a pit of vipers. "Family?" Marco asked. "Yeah," I said, putting the phone away. "They need a dishwasher for the Eclipse event next month." Marco's jaw dropped. "You're joking, chef. You're not going to do it." I looked at the plating station, at the reflection of my face in the polished metal. I saw the scars on my hands, burns from hot oil, cuts from knives, the map of my dedication. "Oh, I'm going to do it, Marco," I said, a cold resolve settling in my chest. "I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make sure it's a night they never forget." I didn't know it then, but I was walking into a trap. Caleb wasn't just hosting a gala. He was orchestrating a fraud, and he needed a scapegoat. To understand why I didn't just tell Caleb to go to hell right then and there, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the debt I thought I owed them. Started 10 years ago. I was 22, fresh-faced and full of dreams. I had been accepted into Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. It was everything I wanted. I had the acceptance letter framed on my nightstand. One evening, my father, Robert, called a family meeting. We sat around the dining table, the same table where I was never allowed to cook because my mother said I made too much of a mess. "Julian," my father started, his face grave, "we need to talk about this Paris trip." "It's not a trip, Dad," I said excitedly. "It's my career. It's the best culinary school in the world." "Yes, well," he sighed, looking at my mother. "Things have changed. Caleb has an opportunity. A massive opportunity." Caleb was sitting across from me, smirking. He was 24 then, just out of business school and already acting like he owned Wall Street. "I found a property," Caleb said. "A fixer-upper in Brooklyn. If I can buy it now, renovate it, and flip it, we're talking about a 200% return. But I need capital." "We've looked at the finances," my mother said, reaching out to touch Caleb's hand affectionately. "To make this work, we need to use the college fund. All of it." My stomach dropped. "But half of that is mine. Grandma left it for both of us." "Caleb is ready now," my father said, his voice hardening. "Cooking school? That's a hobby, Julian. You can learn to cook anywhere. You can get a job at a diner and learn. Caleb is building a future for this family. We need you to step up. We need you to sacrifice your share." "It's an investment, little brother," Caleb added. "I'll pay you back double in a year. Promise. Think of the inheritance we're building." I looked at their faces. They looked at Caleb with pride, and at me with expectation. I wanted their approval so badly. I wanted to be part of the team. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay. For the family." I gave up Paris. I gave up my dream. 6 months later, Caleb rolled into the driveway in a brand new Porsche. Not a fixer-upper house. A Porsche. "Where's the property?" I asked, staring at the shiny metal. "Market shifted," Caleb shrugged, tossing the keys in the air. "Had to pivot. Image is everything in this business, Julian. You have to look rich to get rich. Don't worry, the money is coming." The money never came. He never paid me back. I spent the next decade working double shifts in kitchens, starting as a dishwasher, then a prep cook, clawing my way up while Caleb drove luxury cars and lived off my parents' retirement savings. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the notebook. My grandmother, Nana Rose, was the only one who believed in me. She was a rustic cook, Italian roots, heavy on the herbs and love. She left me her leather-bound notebook. 50 years of recipes, handwritten notes, secrets of sauces that you couldn't find in any book. It was my most prized possession. 3 years ago, I came home for Christmas to find the notebook missing from my room at my parents' house. I tore the place apart. "Mom! Dad!" I yelled. "Where is Nana's book?" My father walked in holding a beer. "Oh, that old thing? You must have lost it, Julian. You were drinking last time you were here." "I don't drink," I said, shaking. "I never drink." "Where is it?" "Don't raise your voice at me," he snapped. "You're irresponsible. You probably left it on the subway. It was just a dusty old book anyway. Stop making a scene." They gaslight me. They convinced me I was crazy, that I was careless. I mourned that book like a person. It was the only tangible proof that I had a legacy. And then there was Elena. 6 months ago, Caleb brought Elena home. A famous food critic. The palette of New York City. She was terrifying and beautiful. Caleb paraded her around like a trophy. We went to dinner at Le Bernardin. I was silent as usual. The fish arrived. Elena took a bite and frowned slightly. "It's overcooked," she murmured. "Just by a few seconds. But the texture is ruined." Caleb laughed nervously. "It tastes fine to me, honey. It's 5 stars. "Actually," I said quietly, speaking for the first time, "it's the residual heat. They plated it too early under the heat lamp. You can tell by the way the protein fibers have tightened on the edges." The table went silent. Caleb turned red. "Shut up, Julian," he hissed. "Don't embarrass me. You flip burgers. Don't lecture a world-renowned critic on texture." He looked at Elena. "Ignore him. He watches too much Food Network. He thinks he's an expert because he can make a grilled cheese." Elena looked at me. Her eyes narrowed, analyzing. She didn't mock me. She just looked curious. But Caleb kicked me under the table hard. I looked down at my plate and didn't speak for the rest of the meal. That was my life. The wallet. The punchline. The disappointment. So, when the request came for the gala, I shouldn't have been surprised. But this time was different. I wasn't just Julian the failure anymore. I was the owner of Eclipse. And I realized something terrifying and liberating at the same time. My brother didn't just want me there to work. He wanted me there to witness his victory. He was using my company to fake his success, and he wanted me to scrub the dishes while he took the credit. I called my lawyer the next morning. "Sarah," I said, "I need you to look into Caleb's finances. Everything. The LLCs, the assets, the debts." "Sure, Julian," she said. "Is something wrong?" "I think my brother is about to try and pull a con," I said. "And I need to know exactly how deep the hole is." 2 days later, Sarah called back. Her voice was serious. "It's bad, Julian. It's worse than bad. He's leveraged everything. The Porsche, the condo, even your parents' house. He forged their signatures on a second mortgage. This gala is a Hail Mary. If he doesn't get funding from a man named Sterling on Saturday night, he's going to prison for fraud. He's completely broke." I sat in my office at the restaurant, the phone cold against my ear. He had bet the house, my parents' house, on a lie. "And one more thing," Sarah added. "He listed you as a guarantor on a business loan. Without your permission." That was the breaking point. The sadness I felt for my family evaporated. All that was left was a cold, hard rage. "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "Get the paperwork ready for a lawsuit. But don't file it yet." "Why not?" "Because," I said, looking at my chef's knife on the desk, "I have a gala to cater first." The week leading up to the gala was a blur of calculated deception. Caleb thought he was hiring a catering company. In reality, he was inviting the wolf right into the sheepfold. I coordinated everything from the shadows. I approved the menu, decadent, expensive, flashy. Exactly what Caleb wanted to show off. Lobster thermidor bites, Wagyu beef sliders with gold leaf, foie gras torchon. It was food designed to scream money. On the day of the event, I showed up at the venue, a massive ballroom in a historic hotel in Midtown. I wasn't wearing my custom chef's whites. I was wearing ill-fitting black slacks and a white shirt that was slightly too big, stained intentionally with a bit of coffee on the collar. I needed to look the part of the downtrodden brother. Caleb met me at the service entrance. He didn't even say hello. "You're late," he snapped, checking his Rolex. "And look at you. You look like a hobo. Tuck your shirt in." "Good to see you too, Caleb," I mumbled, keeping my head down. "Here." He shoved a dirty apron at me. It was one of the spare ones the venue had lying around. Not the crisp Eclipse branded ones my staff wore. "Put this on. You're on Appetizers. Don't talk to the guests unless spoken to. And for God's sake, don't tell anyone we're related unless you have to." I tied the apron strings. "Got it." I walked into the mobile kitchen set up behind the ballroom. The atmosphere changed instantly. My staff, my real family, was there. Marco was running the pass. When I walked in, 3 chefs started to call out, "Chef!" I put a finger to my lips immediately. Shoo! They froze. They knew the plan. To them, this was a covert operation. They knew the owner was undercover. "Treat me like a temp," I whispered to Marco. Yell at me if you have to. Marco looked pained. I can't yell at you, chef. Do it, I ordered. Caleb needs to see it. The prep began. The kitchen was a pressure cooker. Steam rose from giant stockpots. The smell of reducing balsamic glaze and searing beef fat filled the air. It was the scent of home to me, but today it smelled like war. Out in the ballroom, Caleb was giving a tour to Mr. Sterling, the potential investor. Sterling was an older man, sharp eyes, worn suit. Old money. He didn't care about the flash, he cared about substance. Yes, Mr. Sterling, Caleb was saying, his voice oozing charm. I spared no expense. We flew in the truffles from Italy this morning. I have a very strict standard for quality. I walked past them carrying a crate of glasses. Hey, you! Caleb shouted at me. Watch where you're walking. You almost hit Mr. Sterling. I was 5 feet away from them. I hadn't come close. Sorry, sir, I mumbled. Sterling looked at me, then at Caleb. He's fine, son. Relax. It's a party. Details matter, Sterling, Caleb said, puffing out his chest. I run a tight ship, just like I'll run this development project. Back in the kitchen, disaster struck. Or what looked like disaster. A junior sous chef had burned the base for the lobster bisque. The smell of scorched cream wafted through the air. Marco was panicking. We were 30 minutes from service. Throw it out, Marco yelled. We don't have enough stock to remake it. Caleb burst into the kitchen, smelling the smoke. What is that? He screamed. Is something burning? If you idiots ruin my dinner, I will sue you into oblivion. He saw me standing near the sink. Julian, did you do this? Did you touch the stove? I didn't touch anything, I said. Get out of the way. He shoved me aside. Caught Marco's eye. I signaled with 2 fingers. 2 minutes. Caleb stormed out to do damage control. As soon as the door swung shut, I stepped up to the stove. Give me the sherry, the heavy cream, and the saffron, I commanded. My voice shifted from the meek brother to the alchemist instantly. The staff moved like lightning. We can't save the burnt base, I said. We pivot. We make a veloute. Faster. Lighter. I grabbed a pan. High heat. Deglaze with sherry. Reduce. Add the cream. Bloom the saffron. I tasted it. It needed acid. Lemon zest. Now. In 90 seconds, I created a completely new soup course. It was complex, golden, and aromatic. Strain it, I ordered. Serve it in espresso cups as an amuse-bouche instead of a bowl. Call it Golden Sunset. Marco tasted it. His eyes widened. Chef, this is better than the bisque. Service, I said, stepping back to the sink just as the doors opened. Elena walked in. She was looking for the bathroom but took a wrong turn into the kitchen. She saw the frenzy. She saw Marco ladling the soup. Is everything okay? She asked, her voice sharp. I smelled burning. Minor adjustment, ma'am, Marco said smoothly. We decided to upgrade the course. She looked suspicious. She walked over to the station, dipped a spoon into the pot, and tasted it. I held my breath. I was scrubbing a pot in the corner, my back to her. The silence lasted 5 seconds. This flavor, Elena whispered. She took another taste. The balance of saffron and acid. This structural. It's not just good. It's familiar. She looked around the kitchen, her eyes scanning the faces of the cooks. Her gaze landed on my back. Who made this? She asked. It was a team effort, Marco lied. Elena didn't look convinced. She looked at the soup again. I've only tasted this kind of balance in one place, Eclipse. But the head chef there never shows his face. We are Eclipse, ma'am, Marco reminded her. I know, she murmured. But the alchemist isn't supposed to be here tonight. Caleb said he just hired the service. She looked at me one last time, a frown creasing her forehead, before turning and walking back to the party. She knew, or she suspected. The seed was planted. I wiped my hands on my dirty apron. The game was on. The gala officially began. The ballroom filled with the scent of expensive perfume and desperation. Caleb was working the room like a politician, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, pouring wine. I was circulating with the appetizer trays. Every time I passed my parents, they looked away, pretending not to know me. At one point, my mother stopped me, but not to say hello. "Julian," she hissed, grabbing my elbow. "Stand up straight. You're embarrassing us. Mrs. Higgins just asked if you were related to us." I had to tell her you were a distant cousin we took in out of charity. "Charity?" I repeated, looking at her diamond necklace. "A necklace bought with money that should have been my tuition. Is that what we're calling it?" "Don't be ungrateful," she snapped. "Look at your brother. Look at what he's achieved. Just try to support him for once." I walked away before I said something that would ruin the plan. I made my way to the VIP section where Caleb had set up a display case. He was auctioning off family heirlooms to raise money for a fake charity. Another front to wash money, I assumed. I glanced at the items. A watch, some jewelry, and then my heart stopped. There, sitting on a velvet cushion inside the locked glass case, was a worn, leather-bound notebook. My grandmother's notebook. The one they told me I had lost. The one they blamed me for. I froze. The tray of appetizers shook in my hand. I stared at the cover, seeing the grease stain on the corner from when Nana taught me to make ragu. Caleb walked up behind me. He saw me staring. "Nice, isn't it?" he whispered, sipping his whiskey. "Vintage recipes. Authentic Italian grandmother stuff. Bidding starts at 5,000. Some hipster foodie is going to pay a fortune for that rustic authenticity." I turned to him slowly. The rage was no longer cold. It was white-hot. "You stole it," I said. "You told me I lost it." Caleb smirked. "I didn't steal it. I repurposed an underutilized asset. You weren't doing anything with it, Julian. You were just reading it. I'm turning it into capital. That's the difference between us. I create value. You create messes." He tapped the glass. "Don't touch it. You can't afford it." He walked away, laughing. That was the moment. That was the moment the brother died, and the enemy was born. I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to destroy him. I went back to the kitchen. I was vibrating with adrenaline. "Marco," I said, "change the main course." "What?" Marco asked. "We're plating in 10 minutes. "Change it," I said. "Caleb wants to show off? Let's give him a show. We're serving the foie gras torchon with the blackberry gastrique. The one that requires tableside finishing." "But chef, you're the only one who can do the pour correctly," Marco said. "I know," I said. "I'm going out there." "In that apron?" "Exactly." I grabbed a fresh tray of the foie gras appetizers, the prelude to the main course. I walked back into the ballroom. I headed straight for Caleb's table. He was sitting with Mr. Sterling and Elena. He saw me coming and glared. He didn't want me near the VIPs. "More appetizers?" Mr. Sterling asked, looking delighted. "The food tonight is extraordinary, Caleb." "Who is your chef?" Caleb puffed up. "Oh, I have a team. I give them strict direction. I told them exactly how I wanted the flavor profile." I reached the table. I extended the tray. "Foie gras with a fig reduction," I said, my voice steady. Caleb looked at me with pure hatred. He didn't want me speaking. He wanted me invisible. "Nobody wants that," Caleb said, looking at the tray. "It looks dry." "It's perfect," Mr. Sterling said, reaching for one. "Don't mind if I do." Caleb panicked. He needed to assert dominance. He needed to show Sterling that he was the alpha, even over the staff, especially over his brother. He grabbed a piece before Sterling could. He took a bite. He didn't even taste it. He just chewed aggressively, staring me down. Then, he made the mistake that ended his life as he knew it. The jazz music seemed to fade away. The clinking of silverware stopped. All eyes were on the center table. Caleb chewed. He pulled a face of exaggerated disgust. It was a performance, a bad acting job designed to belittle me. "Ugh," he groaned. "Disgusting. Caleb, Elena asked, confused. It looks delicious. It's garbage, Caleb announced loudly, standing up. My brother made this one. I can tell. It lacks refinement. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with malice. I told you, Julian. You're a cook, not a chef. You don't have the touch. And then he leaned forward. He spat the half-chewed appetizer directly onto the chest of my stained apron. A chunk of liver and fig reduction slid down the fabric. My mother, sitting 2 seats away, covered her mouth. And then she giggled. A nervous, enabling giggle. My father shook his head and smirked. Clean yourself up, son. The room went deathly silent. Mr. Sterling looked horrified. Elena looked like she had been slapped. I stood there, looking at the mess on my chest. I didn't wipe it off. I looked up at Caleb. You really shouldn't have done that, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Or what? Caleb challenged. You'll cry? Go wash dishes, Julian. Elena stood up. Her face was pale. She wasn't looking at Caleb. She was looking at the appetizer on the tray. She walked over to me. She ignored the spit on my apron. She reached out and took the tray from my hand. Elena, don't eat that, Caleb warned. It's tainted. Elena ignored him. She picked up a fresh piece of the foie gras. She examined the texture. She smelled the glaze. The fig reduction, she whispered. It's infused with star anise and… Is that a hint of espresso? She put it in her mouth. I watched her eyes close. I watched her shoulders drop. It was the reaction every chef lives for. The moment the food bypasses the brain and hits the soul. She opened her eyes and looked directly at me. The warmth, she said. The technical precision of the torsion. The balance. She turned to Caleb. You idiot. Caleb blinked. Excuse me? You absolute idiot, Elena said, her voice rising. You told me he was a line cook. You told me he couldn't boil water. He can't, Caleb insisted. He's a loser. Elena turned back to me. She reached out and took my hand. My scarred, rough, working hand. She held it up for the table to see. These burn marks, she said, tracing a scar on my thumb. This callus. This is from a Japanese steel knife. This isn't a line cook's hand. She looked me in the eye. You're him, aren't you? Him who? Mr. Sterling asked, standing up. The alchemist, Elena announced. The ghost chef of Eclipse. The man who has 3 Michelin stars and refuses to take credit. Gasps rippled through the room. What? Caleb laughed nervously. Elena, you're drunk. Julian, the alchemist? He's broke. He lives in Queens. I live in Queens because I choose to, I said, finally stepping out of the role. I reached up and untied the dirty apron. I let it drop to the floor, revealing the spit-stained shirt underneath. But it didn't matter anymore. And I'm not broke, Caleb, I said. In fact, I own the company you haven't paid yet. I signaled to Marco, who was watching from the kitchen doorway. Marco walked out, leading the entire kitchen staff. 10 chefs in crisp white coats marched into the ballroom. They lined up behind me. Chef, Marco said loud and clear. Does this man speak for the kitchen? He pointed at Caleb. No, Marco, I said. He doesn't. Then we await your orders, chef, Marco said, bowing his head slightly. Caleb looked from me to the staff, then to his investors. The color drained from his face. This is a prank, Caleb stammered. Mom? Dad? Tell them. My parents looked terrified. They realized the power dynamic had just shifted, but they didn't understand how. Julian? My mother squeaked. Is this true? I ignored her. I turned to Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, I said, my brother is asking you for $5 million for a development project. Before you sign that check, you should know that he is currently over-leveraged on 3 other properties. He forged our parents' signatures on a mortgage and the heirloom notebook in that glass case over there. I pointed to the display. He stole it from my bedroom. It belongs to me. It's the source of every recipe you ate tonight. Mr. Sterling looked at Caleb. He looked at the sweating, shaking man in the expensive suit. Is this true? Sterling asked. No, no, Caleb yelled. He's lying. He's jealous. Elena walked over to the display case. She grabbed a heavy candlestick from the table. Elena, don't! Caleb screamed. Smash! She shattered the glass. She reached in and pulled out the notebook. She opened it to a random page. Veloute of wild mushrooms, she read. Handwritten. Signed, for my little Julian. Cook with love. Nana Rose. She walked back and handed the book to me. I believe this is yours, chef, she said softly. Then, in front of everyone, she leaned down and kissed my hand again. Thank you for the meal. It was the only honest thing about this entire night. She turned to Caleb, pulled the engagement ring off her finger, and dropped it into his champagne glass. Plink. We're done, she said. The sound of the ring hitting the glass was the bell that ended the fight. Caleb was on the ropes and he knew it. Elena, wait, he pleaded, reaching for her. Don't touch her, I said. My voice was low, but for the first time in my life it carried the weight of authority. Caleb spun on me. His face was purple with rage. You ruined this. You ruined everything. You ungrateful little parasite. He lunged at me, but before he could reach me, two large men in suits stepped in front of him. Security. My security. I had them on standby just in case. Get your hands off me, Caleb screamed as they restrained him. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. He picked up his napkin, wiped his mouth, and threw it on the table. Mr. Reeves, Sterling said to Caleb, consider our deal terminated, and expect a call from my legal team regarding the due diligence fraud you attempted tonight. No, Mr. Sterling, please. It's a misunderstanding, Caleb cried, struggling against the guards. Mr. Sterling walked over to me. He pulled a business card from his pocket. Julian, he said, if you ever decide to open another location, perhaps in London or Dubai, call me. I invest in talent, not in whatever this is. He gestured to Caleb, then walked out. The guests began to leave. The muttering was loud. The humiliation was total. But this time it wasn't mine. My parents rushed over to me. I thought for a second they might apologize. I thought they might hug me. Julian, my father shouted. Fix this. Run after Mr. Sterling. Tell him it was a joke. Tell him Caleb is good for the money. Are you insane? I asked, looking at him. He just spat on me. He stole from you. And you want me to save him? He's your brother, my mother sobbed. He's family. You can't let him go to jail. We'll lose the house. You already lost the house, Mom, I said coldly. He forged your signatures. Didn't you hear me? The bank owns it now. Her face went slack. She looked at Caleb, who was now weeping, slumped in the arms of the security guards. Is that true? She whispered. Caleb didn't answer. He just cried. I looked at them, the three people who had defined my worth for 30 years, and I felt nothing. No hate, no love, just a profound sense of indifference. I'm leaving, I said. I clutched the notebook to my chest. You can't leave us here, my father demanded. Who is going to pay for this party? The bill is going to be astronomical. I stopped. I turned back one last time. Actually, I said, since I own the catering company, and since the client clearly violated the terms of service by assaulting a staff member. I pulled a contract from my back pocket, the one Caleb had signed weeks ago without reading the fine print. The contract is void, but the cancellation fee is 100%, plus damages. I looked at Caleb. I'll be sending the invoice to your bankruptcy lawyer. I turned to Marco. Pack up the kitchen. We're done here. Yes, chef, the staff shouted in unison. I walked out of the ballroom, past the shattered glass, past the weeping brother, past the stunned parents. Elena was waiting for me in the lobby. She looked at me, her eyes red but her chin high. Can I give you a ride? She asked. I don't think you want to take the subway with that apron. I looked down at the spit stain one last time. I untied the apron completely and let it fall to the marble floor of the hotel lobby. "No," I said. "I don't." I stepped over the apron. "Let's go get a burger," I said. "I know a place that cooks it medium rare. Perfectly." Elena smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen on her all night. "Lead the way, chef." Took exactly 6 months for the dust to settle. 6 months of lawyers, depositions, and headlines. But when the smoke cleared, I was standing on top of the rubble, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking down at my shoes. I was looking straight ahead. The cover of Bon Appetit magazine sat on my desk in the newly renovated office of Eclipse. It was a stark, black and white portrait. Just my face, half in shadow, looking directly into the lens. No apron, no chef's hat, just me. The headline read in bold, embossed letters. "The Alchemist Unmasked. How Julian Reeves Turned Humiliation into High Art." I picked up the magazine. Felt heavy. Real. "You're staring at yourself again," a voice said from the doorway. I looked up. Sophia, my floor manager and one of my fiercest protectors, was leaning against the frame, smiling. "I'm not staring," I lied, tossing the magazine down. "I'm checking the print quality." "Right?" she laughed. "Well, check this. We're booked solid for the next 18 months. The wait list is now longer than the one for a kidney transplant. And Mr. Sterling just sent over a case of 1982 Chateau Margaux as a thank you for your integrity gift." "Send it back," I said automatically. "Julian," Sophia sighed, "you can keep gifts. You're the boss. You're the star. Learn to say yes." She was right. I was still unlearning 30 years of conditioning. I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to tell me I wasn't good enough to drink the expensive wine. But the reality was unavoidable. The gala had gone viral. Someone, a server, a guest, maybe even Elena, had recorded the moment Caleb spat on me. The video had millions of views. The internet, usually a cruel place, had rallied behind the sad chef. They dissected the video, lip-reading Elena's defense, analyzing the food on the tray. Overnight, I hadn't just become famous. I had become a symbol of quiet competence fighting against loud incompetence. And Caleb? Caleb had become a symbol too. I spun my chair around and looked out the window at the Tribeca Street below. The fallout for my brother had been swift and brutal. Mr. Sterling didn't just pull his investment. He filed a lawsuit for misrepresentation and attempted fraud. That triggered an audit by the IRS. Then the bank called in the loans. I remembered the day the repo trucks came for his toys. I wasn't there, but Sarah, my lawyer, gave me the play-by-play. Caleb had been screaming on the front lawn of his rented mansion in the Hamptons. He tried to physically block the tow truck driver from hooking up the Ferrari. He was shouting about his rights, about who he knew, about how this was all a mistake. The driver didn't care. He just hooked up the bright red status symbol and drove away. The Porsche followed an hour later. Caleb was currently awaiting trial for wire fraud and forgery regarding my parents' mortgage documents. He was out on bail, living in a cheap motel in Jersey because my parents had lost the house. The house. That was the only part that gave me a pang of guilt. But Sarah reminded me, "You didn't take their house, Julian. They gambled it. They signed papers they didn't read because they were greedy for Caleb's success. You just stopped paying the mortgage you never agreed to pay." My parents were currently living in a small rental apartment, paid for by the little social security they had left. They had tried to contact me 100 times. Letters, emails, calls from blocked numbers. I never answered. "Chef," Marco stuck his head in. "Service starts in 30. You need to taste the saffron risotto. I think the acidity is off." "Coming," I said. I buttoned my chef's coat. It was custom-made now, embroidered with my name, Julian Reeves. Not the alchemist. Just me. The dinner service was electric. The energy in the dining room was different now that people knew who was cooking. They didn't just come to eat. They came to see the survivor. Around 9 p.m., the hostess, a sharp young woman named Chloe, walked into the kitchen. She looked pale. "Chef," she whispered, We have a situation at the front desk. What is it? I asked, wiping a plate rim. Paparazzi again? No, she said. It's a couple. They don't have a reservation. They're refusing to leave. They say they're your parents. The kitchen went silent. Marco stopped chopping. The line cooks looked at me. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Familiar and unwelcome. They had found the courage to come here. To my sanctuary. Did you tell them we're full? I asked, my voice steady. I did, Chloe said. The man, your father, he's making a scene. He's telling the guests in the lobby that he taught you everything you know. He's trying to do interviews with people waiting for tables. I closed my eyes. Of course, they weren't here to apologize. They were here to capitalize. They saw the magazine cover, they heard about the waitlist, and they smelled money. They thought enough time had passed. They thought family was a magic word that reset the scoreboard. Marco, I said, take the pass. You want me to call security? Marco asked, reaching for the phone. I can have the police here in 5 minutes. No, I said, untying my apron. If we call the police, they'll sell the story to the tabloids. Ungrateful chef arrests elderly parents. That's the narrative they want. I smoothed my jacket. I'll handle this. Set up table 9. The private alcove near the kitchen. Chef. Marco looked confused. You're going to feed them? Yes, I said, a dark idea forming in my mind. I'm going to feed them. Prepare the special menu. The one I told you about. The legacy menu. Marco's eyes widened. He knew what I meant. He nodded slowly, a grim smile appearing on his face. Yes, chef. I walked out of the kitchen and into the lobby. My father was wearing an old suit that smelled of mothballs. My mother was wearing a dress that was too formal for a Tuesday, clutching a knockoff handbag. They looked older, smaller, but their eyes were the same, hungry and entitled. When they saw me, my mother let out a theatrical gasp. Julian, my baby. She rushed forward, arms open, aiming for a hug that the cameras, if there were any, would capture perfectly. I stepped back. She hugged the air. Hello, mother. Hello, father. Is this how you greet us? My father boomed, trying to project authority. We've been trying to reach you for months. We were worried sick. Worried about the bank account? Or worried about me? I asked quietly. Don't be cruel, my mother sniffled. We read the article. We're so proud of you. We always knew you had a gift. Didn't we, Robert? We always told him he was special. The revisionist history was almost impressive. You're making a scene, I said. You want a table? Well, yes. My father straightened his tie. We're family. We shouldn't need a reservation. We want to see what all the fuss is about. And maybe we can talk about the future. Caleb is in a bad way, Julian. He needs help. We need help. There it was, the ask. Come with me, I said. I led them through the dining room. I saw the whispers ripple through the crowd. Is that them? Are those the parents? I sat them at table 9. It was isolated, quiet. This is nice, my mother said, touching the linen tablecloth. Very fancy. I assume the champagne is on the house. I'll bring you something special, I said. A tasting menu, curated just for you, to honor our history. My father smiled, looking around the room as if he already owned a percentage of it. That sounds appropriate. Bring out the best stuff. The lobster, the truffles. We deserve a little luxury after what we've been through. I went back to the kitchen. Is it time? Marco asked. It's time, I said. Boil the water. 15 minutes later, I walked back to the table. I was carrying a silver cloche, the large dome used to cover the main dish. I placed it in the center of the table. My parents looked at the silver dome with greedy anticipation. Is this the steak? My father asked, picking up his fork. I read about your Wagyu. This, I said, my hand on the handle of the cloche, is the dish that defines my childhood. It's the dish that represents everything you invested in me. Oh, how sweet, my mother cooed. I lifted the cloche. Steam rose up. Underneath, sitting in a $300 ceramic bowl, was a block of instant ramen noodles. Not the fancy kind. The cheap, dehydrated square brick you buy for 30 cents at the corner store. It was boiled slightly too soft, sitting in lukewarm water. No broth, no garnish, just the pale, limp noodles. Next to it, on a small saucer, was a single packet of flavor dust. MSG and salt. My parents stared at it. The smile slid off my mother's face like grease. What is this? My father asked, his voice trembling with anger. It's dinner, I said calmly. Don't you recognize it? It's what I ate for dinner almost every night while I was working double shifts to pay for Caleb's car insurance. It's what you told me I was good for. Remember? He can only make noodles. This is an insult, my father hissed. People are watching. Let them watch, I said, my voice rising just enough to be heard by the nearby tables. You wanted the best? This is the best representation of your parenting I could find. Cheap, quick, and devoid of any real substance. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a bill. That will be $50, I said. For the water. You're joking, my mother gasped. We're your parents. And this is a business, I said. A business owned by the cook you laughed at. You have two choices. You can eat the noodles, pay the bill, and leave. Or you can leave hungry. But either way, you are never stepping foot in here again. My father stood up, his face purple. You ungrateful brat. We gave you life. And then you tried to starve it out of me, I countered. You sold my grandmother's legacy to buy a sports car. You laughed when your son spat on me. You don't have a son anymore, Robert. You have a creditor. And your credit is no good here. I signaled to security. Two large men materialized from the shadows of the hallway. Escort Mr. and Mrs. Reeves out, I ordered. And if they return, call the police for trespassing. You'll regret this, my father shouted as the guards took his arms. You'll die alone, Julian. Money won't buy you family. I already have a family, I said, looking back at the kitchen where Marco and the team were watching through the pass window. Get out. They were dragged out, shouting and cursing. The dining room was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then another. Soon, the whole room was applauding. I didn't bow. I didn't smile. I just turned around and walked back into the kitchen. Marco handed me a glass of water. His hand was on my shoulder. You okay, chef? I took a sip. The water tasted clean. Yeah, I said. I think the menu is finally complete. That night, I went home to my new apartment. It wasn't a penthouse, but it had a massive kitchen and a view of the river. I sat on the balcony, looking at the city lights. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. The judge denied Caleb's motion to dismiss. He's looking at 3 to 5 years. And your parents just engaged a public defender for the bankruptcy hearing. It's over, Julian. I put the phone down. It was over. The war was won. But winning a war doesn't mean you're healed. It just means the shooting has stopped. I realized then that my success, the Michelin stars, the fame, it was all great, but it wasn't the cure. I had cut out the cancer, but I still had to stitch up the wound. I needed something else. I needed the one ingredient that had been missing from my life for as long as I could remember. Peace. Peace is a strange ingredient. You can't buy it from a supplier. You can't grow it in a garden. You have to make it scratch-made every single day. 3 months after I banned my parents, I was in the test kitchen at Eclipse. It was a Sunday, the one day we were closed. I loved the silence of the kitchen on Sundays. The stainless steel wasn't humming with heat. It was cool, reflective, waiting. I wasn't alone. Elena was sitting on the counter, swinging her legs, watching me prep garlic. We hadn't jumped straight into a romance. Real life isn't a movie. After the gala, we spent weeks just talking. She had to process the betrayal of the man she thought she was going to marry. I had to process the fact that someone actually saw me, really saw me, for the first time. But we bonded over the one language we both spoke fluently. Food. You're slicing it too thin, Elena noted. peering over my shoulder. If you put that in the oil, it'll burn before the aroma releases. I'm making aglio e olio, I corrected, not looking up. The garlic needs to melt. It's not a sauté. It's an infusion. Debatable, she teased. My grandmother used to crush the cloves whole. Your grandmother was a wonderful woman, I'm sure. I smiled. But she wasn't the alchemist. Cocky, she laughed. She hopped off the counter and walked over to me. She smelled like vanilla and old books. It was intoxicating. Julian, she said, her voice turning serious. I have something for you. I wiped my hands on a towel. If it's another award, put it on the shelf. I'm running out of space. It's not an award, she said. She reached into her oversized tote bag. I've been working on this for a while. It wasn't easy. The police had it in evidence because of Caleb's fraud case. They considered it an asset of value, intended for auction. My heart skipped a beat. I knew before she pulled it out. She placed the heavy, leather-bound book on the stainless steel table. The notebook. My breath caught in my throat. It looked exactly the same. The cracked spine. The oil stain on the corner. The smell of oregano and history wafting off the pages. How? I whispered. I have a good lawyer, Elena shrugged. And I might have threatened to write a scathing review of the police commissioner's favorite steakhouse if they didn't release it. I argued it was stolen property, returned to the rightful owner. I reached out and touched the cover. My hand was shaking. This book was my childhood. It was the only time I felt safe, standing on a stool next to Nana Rose, stirring the pot. Open it, Elena whispered. I opened it to a random page. Sunday gravy, ragu napoletano. My grandmother's handwriting was looped and messy. Don't rush the onions, Julian. Let them weep. They need to cry before they can be sweet. Just like people. I read the note and felt a tear slide down my own cheek. She knew, I whispered. She always knew. She knew you would be great, Elena said, putting a hand on my back. She didn't need a Michelin star to tell her that. I looked at the recipe. It was simple. Pork shoulder, beef shank, San Marzano tomatoes, wine, basil. No truffle oil. No gold leaf. No sous vide machines. I need to cook this, I said. Right now. I'll be your sous chef, Elena said, rolling up her sleeves. But don't yell at me. I never yell, I said. For the next 4 hours, the high-tech kitchen of Eclipse transformed into a rustic Italian grandmother's kitchen. We didn't use the fancy equipment. I used a wooden spoon and a heavy cast-iron pot. We seared the meat. The smell of browning fat filled the air. A primal, comforting scent. We deglazed with red wine, the hiss of the pan sounding like applause. We crushed the tomatoes by hand, messy and visceral. I watched Elena chop basil. She was focused, biting her lip. She wasn't a professional chef, but she respected the ingredients. She treated the food with love. That was what Caleb never understood. That was what my parents never understood. Food isn't about money. It isn't about status or showing off to investors. Food is about care. It's about taking something raw and making it nourishing. It's an act of service, not servitude. Taste, I said, holding out a spoon of the simmering sauce. Elena leaned in and tasted. She closed her eyes. Oh my God, she whispered. It tastes like home. It needs more salt, I said, critical as always. It's perfect, Julian, she argued. Stop analyzing. Just feel it. We sat on the floor of the kitchen to eat. No tables, no white linens. Just 2 bowls of pasta with the dark, rich meat sauce, a loaf of crusty bread, and a bottle of cheap Chianti. It was the best meal of my life. So, Elena said, wiping sauce from her lip with a piece of bread. What now? You conquered New York. You destroyed your enemies. You got the girl. What's the next chapter? I looked at her. I got the girl? Work in progress, she smirked. But the girl is very interested in the position. I laughed. Felt good to laugh. Felt light. I think. I started looking at the empty bowls. I think I want to teach. Teach. Yeah. Not rich kids who want to be celebrity chefs. I want to open a program for kids like me, kids who are invisible, kids who are told they're only good for washing dishes. I want to give them knives and show them how to build a future. Elena smiled, and it was radiant. The Alchemist Academy. I liked the sound of that. No. I shook my head. The Nana Rose Foundation. I picked up the notebook. This book shouldn't be hidden in a safe. It should be shared. The next week, I announced my semi-retirement from the daily grind of the kitchen. I promoted Marco to head chef. He cried when I gave him his own monogram jacket. I used the money, the millions I had made, to buy a building in the Bronx. We turned it into a culinary school for at-risk youth. Tuition was free. The only requirement was passion. My first class had 20 students. They were tough kids, scarred kids, kids who looked at the floor when you spoke to them. I stood at the front of the classroom on the first day. I was wearing my apron, clean, white, proud. My name is Julian Reeves, I said. And a long time ago, someone told me I was just a cook, not a chef. They meant it as an insult. But let me tell you something. I picked up an onion. A chef is a title. Cook is a doer. A cook feeds people. A cook heals people. In this kitchen, we don't care about titles. We care about the work. We care about the plate. I looked at their faces. I saw the spark in their eyes. The same spark I had when I was 22. Today, I said, we're going to make an omelet. It sounds simple, but if you can make a perfect omelet, you can do anything. As I demonstrated the technique, swirling the butter in the pan, I thought about Caleb. I had heard from Sarah that morning. He had taken a plea deal. 2 years in minimum security. My parents were filing for bankruptcy. They were alone. I felt a twinge of sadness, but it passed quickly. I had broken the cycle. The abuse stopped with me. The neglect stopped with me. I looked at the back of the class. Elena was standing there, leaning against the doorframe, holding a camera. She snapped a photo of me teaching a young girl how to hold a knife properly. She gave me a thumbs up. I smiled back. I wasn't the alchemist anymore. I wasn't the ghost chef. I wasn't Caleb's brother or Robert's disappointment. I was Julian, and I was cooking. And for the first time in 32 years, the aftertaste of my life wasn't bitter. It was sweet. Conclusion. The recipe for self-worth. Narrator speaks directly to the camera. Voice warm and sincere. So, that's my story. It took me a long time to realize that the toxic people in my life were like bad ingredients. No matter how much you dress them up, they'll always ruin the dish. We often think that because someone is family, we have to tolerate their disrespect. We think we have to eat the burnt food they serve us and say thank you. But we don't. The biggest lesson I learned wasn't how to make a veloute or how to run a business. It was that you cannot starve yourself to feed people who only want to consume you. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. And real success isn't about the cars you drive or the galas you host. It's about going to sleep at night with a clear conscience and waking up excited to do work that matters. If you're stuck in a situation where you feel invisible, where people are spitting on your dreams, literally or metaphorically, please know this: your value is not defined by their inability to see it. You are the chef of your own life. Don't let anyone else write the menu. Thank you so much for listening to my journey. It means the world to me that you stuck around to the end. I want to hear from you. What is the one ingredient you need to cut out of your life to find peace? Is it a toxic relationship? A bad habit? Or simply the fear of not being enough? Let me know in the comments. Or, if this story resonated with you and you're glad justice was finally served, just comment the word good below. Seeing those comments tells me that we're in this together, and that fairness still matters. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth. I'll see you in the next story. Stay hungry, my friends.